Throughout known history, art has been one of humanity's greatest endeavours. It was a way to express the inexpressible, to give form to the divine, and to carve into the material world a reflection of the eternal. Old masters like Michelangelo and Da Vinci revealed how far one can push human creativity. They didn't merely sculpt marble or paint canvas, they infused their work with meaning, beauty, mystery, this unshakable sense of purpose, and metaphysical energy of life. Their unique art was not a decoration, it was a bridge between the human and the divine, a celebration of form, proportion, and more importantly, truth. Fast forward to today, one can sense that something important has been lost. Much of modern and postmodern art rejects these principles of beauty and transcendence, favoring fragmentation, irony, deep cynicism, and in so many cases simply repulsive ugliness. From an act of glorification to an act of rebellion, modern art seeks to deconstruct rather than build. It seeks to shock rather than inspire or elevate. It's deeply depressing rather than optimistic and visionary. The human form, which once stood as a pinnacle of artistic achievement, has been distorted, violated, or completely disregarded. It would be very silly for me to say that this state of art is an anomaly, a cancerous growth that needs to be cut out. Art has a tendency to express the position of society. It's known for being a mirror, reflecting back at us and showing us who we are as individuals and as a broader collective. We got to this point through a natural sequence of events, and one of those events, so eloquently described by Professor Frank Freude in his book titled First World War, Still No End in Sight, was World War I. He talks about the Great War and all of the conflicts it bred from a primarily sociological perspective, identifying World War I as a pivotal moment of transition between the old and the new. The effect of this transition, the author claims, had a dissolvent effect upon conventional belief and behavior, which then led to a loss of belief in the legitimacy of the institutions and ideals associated with pre-war regimes. With the pre-1914 elites delegitimized and discredited, he further argues that an exhausted West completely lost confidence in its own belief and values, and unfortunately, and I quote from the book here, the experience of the following centuries has shown that what was lost has neither been regained nor replaced. I often wonder what would need to happen to arrest this seemingly unstoppable decline towards the pits of hell. Can we hope? We sure can. There is a growing movement of artists who are pushing back against this decline, seeking to revive the timeless principles of beauty, truth, and harmony in art. And this is what brings me to my guest today, Sabin Howard, a sculptor whose work has been described as both a nod to classical masters and a bold vision for the future. Sabin's sculptures, including his work on the National World War I Memorial in Washington, D.C., called A Soldier's Journey, a 58-foot-long bronze artwork depicting vivid scenes from the war, challenge the status quo of contemporary art and do a damn good job reminding us of the power of the human form to inspire, connect, and even heal old emotional wounds. In this interview, we'll dive into Sabin's journey from his early influences and classical training to his battles through the concentric circles of seemingly impenetrable governmental bureaucracy and art establishment. We'll discuss what drives his passion for creating grand works of enduring beauty and his vision for a future where art can once again serve as a beacon of hope and transcendence. If you've ever felt disillusioned with the state of modern art and wondered what it would take to spark a renaissance in our time, this interview is for you. This is where you can get inspired. Let's dive in. Mr. Howard, I'm really interested in your origin story. Can you share how your upbringing and early life shaped your artistic vision and general philosophy?
Yeah, totally. I'm bicultural. So born in New York City, 1963, and then at 3 months old, we take an ocean liner back to Italy, and I'm in Milan and Torino, and I'm there till I'm three, and I'm really exposed to Baroque beauty, very traditional. Um, European cities are just on another level in terms of like aesthetics. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, my dad goes, okay, we're going back to the US now. And so we're back on the ship and we land in New York and it's like Vietnam War. And all of a sudden, I'm thrown into this ugliness, and it was shocking in a way. But what happened was it created my hard drive, and my hard drive is modern because of living in New York City. Because it's a think outside the box, anything's possible, and question everything in authority, and then also let's follow with the traditional, which is sacred from for myself, because that I make art because it I grew up in a place that my heart was open, and I always want to return to that as an adult.
I'm assuming that Italy must have been incredibly inspirational for you when you were growing up there.
The funny part about that is I didn't start making art till I was 19, but I was only exposed to art on a European level. So I thought art was Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Raphael. I had not a clue that it was Jackson Pollock, de Kooning, and this ugliness, this anti-aesthetic thing. And it was like, WTF, what is this? When I got to art school, they're telling me, oh, there are people here that are doing like this conceptual stuff. And I was completely flummoxed. I had not a clue about what it was.
What was the pivotal moment that focused you on art? Because you said you didn't really pay much attention until you turned 19.
Well, I was a lit major. I went to school, at University of Massachusetts, and I went to college because my parents were both PhDs. They're like, you have to go to college. And so I was like, I don't want to go to college. And they said, no, you have to go to college. Or so I went to college, and I drop out after 2 semesters. And then I find myself in South Philly, and I get a job at a furniture restoration place. Um, and um, Monday, I come in. Thursday, I'm like, I can't do this. I'm not using my brain. And I go to my boss and I say, listen, I'm going to quit. And he says, well, you can't quit. You're not going to be a cabinet maker then. I said, well, I don't want to be a cabinet maker. He goes, well, then I'm not going to pay you. And I basically flipped him the finger, and I walked out without pay, and I had a quarter in my pocket. So first call was to my dad. I make it a collect call on a payphone, and I say, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to go to art school. I want to be an artist." And he goes, "How long is this going to last?" And then he hangs up on me. So then my next call is to the Philadelphia College of Art, and I asked to speak to admissions, and they patched me through. I speak to this lady, and she says, "Will you please bring your portfolio in then?" And I said, "What is a portfolio?" And I guess I'm telling you the story because I really began at zero. So that lady in the admissions office told me to get a book. It was called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. And I go get the book immediately. And I went back to my apartment, and I did the exercises every night after, getting another construction job every night for 3 months. And then I went back to her with 90 drawings, and I showed her the drawings. And so she pulls out 10 of them, and she goes, you're going to get in art school. I said, how do you know? She said, well, I'm the head of admissions, and you're going to get in. These are really, really extraordinary. And I really worked my butt off. It wasn't like, here's the thing. I don't feel I have a great gift as an artist, but I have incredible perseverance.
I did look at your drawings the other day, and I absolutely loved your style. They're very detailed and very beautiful. I'd love to buy a print of you and hang it on one of the walls in my house for sure.
Okay.
All right, let's move on. What initially drew you to classical figurative sculpture in an era that's so dominated by abstraction and postmodernism?
I had been involved in woodworking in high school. So I very much was a part of the physicality of making things. I really had a connection instantly with putting, measuring, and constructing things. And I ended up when I was 14 years old in the Medici tomb in Florence with my parents. And we walk in there, and I was like looking at all the marble, um, the structural aspect, the architectural part of the room. And I said, this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm fascinated by it. And then I see Michelangelo's figures of the day, the night, the dawn, and dusk, and the two Medici captains. And it was a moment of sheer fascination with I was hit with a visceral reaction to that art. And it's a chemical reaction that I had looking at it, and it was about the structure, about the beauty, about the order, and didn't understand that it was a philosophical statement. The way that these uh, all these parts, the actual room, the decorations of the room, the scale of the figures, the way the figures were broken down anatomically, all fit together in a hierarchy that was cohesively designed in a unity of wholeness. It was a oneness. And that's a philosophical statement that now I'm 61 years old and I really understand it at a deeper level. There's something really foul afoot with modern art. It's a way to degrade humanity and destroy the sense of connectedness with your fellow human beings and the universe. It's a way to alienate us. It makes fun of us. It's ironic. It's the emperor's new clothes. It's a complete scam.
It sounds like you had a kind of a mystical experience looking at the art. The universal order of the configuration of the room and the art in it has captured you beyond what you're able to maybe rationally comprehend and articulate to yourself. You called it oneness, the natural order of the universe. Would it be fair to compare modern art to philosophy of atheism? Atheists, unable to have a mystical experience, tend to dedicate their entire existence to trivializing, mocking, and insulting people who do have access to such experiences. Modern artists, I'm guessing, feel nothing when they look at what you and I would call true art, classical art, and like atheists and religion, they dedicate their lives to annihilation of beauty standards, meaning, and aspiration beyond the individual. I'm not quite sure if I'm formulating this question properly, but is spirituality integral when it comes to the creation of real, beautiful art?
Yeah, as I've gotten older and I've been doing the same thing for 42 years. And in the last few years, the spirituality of what I make has taken on a deeper meaning. There's a um, sense of connectedness to Western civilization, and Western civilization is born upon Christ consciousness and Greco-Roman um, Greece and Rome morphed into Christianity. And there are certain tenets that are incredible that you cannot just chuck them out because they're old fashioned and archaeological. I'm going to name one. We are made in God's image. You do not have to believe in God or any sense of knowing that there is a Christ. You don't have to have any connection on a religious level. But if you say we are made in God's image, it implies that we are made from something that is grander and greater than us. It's an implication of the sacred. So this means that human beings are sacred because they are an extension of God. You can change the name God to rock if you want. We are made in rock's image, whatever you want to call it. It's larger than us. It's the universe. Um, I have moved more towards Christ because I understand that things that are of value, for example, the Bible, it even if you look at it as a mythology and not a religious book, I'm giving you an option. There has a deep amount of history in it. Why did it last so long? And then why was it thrown away? And why does it trigger people so much that they will make a fuss and say it's like, oh, they turn their nose up on it. We live in an era where most things are turned into an us versus them. And so this whole thing about modernism and the alienation and the chaotic nature that it's occupied and the art that's made doesn't allow people to feel uplifted. Most modern art questions being uplifted, and it connects you to things that are degrading. The sense of being alone or alienated, it's a difficult way to live your life. It's actually a little bit sick. And it doesn't bring human beings to a place of well being. It's not healthy. So it's like I do not get the sense that people look at modern art and get this elevated sense of, wow, I belong to something bigger than myself. No, it becomes more of a philosophical puzzle that makes people feel like, oh, I'm not connected to anybody. And I guess when I die, I'll be buried in the ground and earthworms will be eating me. I mean, that's like kind of a tortured, tormented view of reality. It's like, why would you want to go there?
Indeed, it's a massive mystery. Why do you think postmodernism is so attractive to self proclaimed artists?
I, 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 I have really given this a lot of thought. And I think um, we've got a problem because schools are just shit at this point. Academics are stuck in a status quo, and galleries, critics, and museums are all extensions of the universities. And so the universities are living in a bubble that really doesn't have much to do with the external world. And the dialogue is between other academics and the students are, they're going to go along with the program because they're looking, to pass their classes. So they're not going to tell their teacher that he's nuts and what he's coming up with is a load of hooey, because they'll get kicked out of school. So you have to become part of the herd and you go along with the program. And if you have any vision that is not along go that doesn't go along with that, you can't argue it in this day. And politically things have gotten even worse because if you say something that goes against the system, what do they call it? Misinformation? It's not really misinformation. It's just a different vision of reality. And all these things that are supposed to be, like what do they call it? Conspiracy theorists. It's just very strange because all these conspiracies are now all of a sudden turning out to be true. So it's like this word misinformation and conspiracy theory is they're all these are used to discredit other ways of thinking and being. And honestly, it's like I really realized this when I went through the process of getting the sculpture through the bureaucracy of Washington. I was faced with a lot of academics with the Commission of Fine Arts. Um, Honestly, they were all godless heathens. And And I'm not saying that politely. I mean, these are like really dumbasses that don't know their ass from their elbow when it comes to like, what does it mean to be a human? And making art is a very, very human thing. So if you take that away from people and you start making an art that has no value for general public, the end result is that art becomes something of zero value for general public because now it's been usurped and hijacked by all these values that are extraneous to reality and come out of the universities. And it's time for change. And the memorial was my way to fight the system and get around the gallery and the critics and get high visibility and then have a platform to speak about what is actually truthful and what is the light.
You know, to an outsider, it looks like you've completely threaded the needle. It's a little miracle that it actually all happened.
It's a miracle that it happened. Every step of the way, we combated against an enemy, and it is an enemy. It's like you always talk about the barbarian is at the gate. No, the barbarian is inside the castle, and he has taken over the castle. And I had a real wake up call. I went into Washington, D.C., very green, and I came out very cynical and realized that governments are cesspools. They attract people with low consciousness. And it made me even angrier because it's like, as an artist, I really always saw art as something that was sacred. If you go back to the art, even the earliest art, prehistoric art like the caves in Lascaux, um, those paintings that were done inside those caves were so that the hunters could see the next day. They could see the light of the next day, and the art had tremendous meaning. Now, I'm not saying we're in that same place today because we don't have to hunt for our food, but art should have tremendous meaning because a message to the real world of what is possible. It's about, for myself, rising to the occasion. If you look at art such as the David or the Last Judgment and the Sistine Chapel or Leonardo's The Last Supper, you are struck by the beauty and the philosophy of how all these parts and complexity of so many different things can be cohesive and tied together in one whole. And that is the message that is been destroyed, and it needs to be brought back.
Can I ask you about the competition that you won for the Washington World War One Memorial? Was that with local or federal government?
It was a Centennial Commission was a private organization, and I got really lucky because the gentleman Edwin Fountain, who was one of the founders, uh, said to me after we'd won, there were 360 teams that entered, and we win this in 2016 in January. He said, "I like the Grant Memorial in front of the Capitol, and this is one of the United States really is it's a superb sculpture for the United States. We're a very poor country when it comes to fine art and especially sculpture. And this is probably one of the best pieces that we have." So I went and had a look at it, and um, I was shocked by how kinetic and dramatic, and also it's a visual narrative. You don't have visual narrative in art anymore these days. Um, and I had this vision of, okay, I'm going to make something like the Renaissance, but I'm going to make it modern. And um, I had to morph as an artist. I had to really learn on the job because I went from being a very esoteric artist um, that had great connection with Italy and my roots and the Greco-Roman um, sculptures that I had studied for 35 years, but that's not going to cut it when it comes to making a monument, because a monument, you're in service of the people that come, to the viewers, the visitors. So you have to do something that is for them. You're not doing it only for yourself in your studio. And it's being in service of that changed my whole attitude towards the art making process. So now you're doing something that is for community and country. And again, this is a national memorial, so I have to do something that's going to exemplify the excellence of the United States. It's like if you make something mediocre, you failed. So I'm here. I am, and as we go through this process, it's like I'm going to the Commission of Fine Arts, and these people that I'm presenting to have not a clue about what a museum is, or what traditional art is. And this is the thing that I'm just most passionate and close to. And it was a rude wake up call.
I think some people in the audience, especially the younger artists, might be wondering, a competition of this type, is it rare? Does that happen frequently? Or is this once in a decade occurrence? Or is it quite frequent? And actually, if you know where to go, these competitions do happen quite frequently across different states, if you take North America as an example.
Honestly, I think okay, if you're an artist and you're a young artist, you have to learn your skill, your craft, right? And so you're going to learn the nuts and bolts. With painter or a sculptor, you have to learn the nuts and bolts. It takes a while. And then when you're doing that, you're emulating your masters. Who are the masters historically that you are most attracted to? And then eventually you'll have a voice. So that's just only one part of the situation. You have to learn how to navigate something that is not structured. So not only do you have to learn how to create your art, you have to learn how to create your life. And I'm very inventive. And I say, you tell me no, I'll figure out a way to get through. I'm a stubborn bastard. It's like, okay, you got to, who the hell would have come up with doing a 60-foot long bronze that has 38 figures, weighs 25 tons, and it has a Renaissance tradition in it. It's like, that's like, I'm, I'm myopic. I don't look around me for the answers. I create the answers. I have a vision of what should be. So I entered this contest, and I didn't listen to anybody. In the initial phase, I'm being told more barbed wire. We want some horses. We want people running over the top. We want a machine gun. And I'm like, I have smoke coming out my ears. And then I go see the Last Judgment poster in my studio one day, and I'm like, that's what you got to do. That's what you know. Michelangelo is your guide. You follow your guide because that's what you know. And I think this is what young artists need to do. They need to really buckle down and find a mentor, a teacher that gives them the information of how to do it. You need to learn the structure to work within so you can problem solve when you are alone in your studio and you're your own master. And from there, then when you enter into whatever you're going to do, if you're going to do a show or you're going to enter a competition, you have to grab the horse by the reins and you have to speak up, and you have to be an advocate for yourself. Nobody is coming to save you, and this is not only for artists, this is for everything in life. And I had done a tremendous amount of work on my mind as an artist, thinking about like, how do you make a living? How do you make money? How do you run a business? So I had to learn that part alongside with the art. So when I got to the competition and I was told all these things, I would fight back politely and diplomatically, but I would prove my point. And so I'm the reason I'm telling you this is because I came up with um, 25 iterations to finally hit the final one, came up with 12,000 poses to finally hit 38 poses in the final one. And then I came up with the budget. And then I came up with the how to do this and how long it would take me and how I would be paid. I went out and got a lawyer, and my wife came on board as a project manager. So what I'm telling you is there are opportunities in life, and you have to learn how to speak up. It's not always the best thing to let your fear take over. I think it's really important to um, stand up, and it's the courage, how much courage you have, because fear, everyone has fear, and the courage is what allows you to pass through the fear.
That's fantastic. Really good guidance for people who are wondering how to get into this business and how to best move forward. Let's talk about the artist or thinkers that have most inspired your work. What about their ideas resonates with you?
Oh, honestly, the man who has really guided me the most is Michelangelo, and I have read every book that I have been able to find on him, because many of the things that he passed through as an artist 500 years ago are very similar to the things that I have had to pass through um, with this large commission. And um, I'm deeply attracted to him because draftsmanship is a huge part of his creative process, and the translation of drawing into sculpture and even painting. It becomes, you know, um, a way to organize your thoughts. And so, if you look at what I created in the memorial, it is not pure sculpture at all. It's a mixture of pictorial space and sculptural form. There's perspective in it, and it is not something that has been done in the past, but it's really playing forward from the tradition of Western civilization, the next step in the line of what is possible. And the reason I'm saying this is because we live in a very, very different time than all those masters, those heroes um, that came before us. And we can look at them for guidance, but then you have to step into the void and create something that is completely innovative. And I think that's one of the problems with Europe, that the United States is more capable of being creative and stepping into the void. I think the United States, though, has trouble with holding on to tradition. And I think this is a balance on a tightrope that art really, really needs today, because a lot of modern art is all about just destroying and throwing out the past, no matter what, and then starting at zero, recreate the wheel, and it doesn't really get you anywhere. It's like, let's throw out God. You see what happened with that. Um, it's more that you have to take the past, honor it, but don't treat it as you are resuscitating it archaeologically. You have to look for that fire, and the fire is now alive because you are living in a different time, and now you can go and make something that's completely innovative with that idea of the past.
Your sculptures embody a profound sense of beauty and humanism. How do you define beauty in art, and why is beauty important?
It's a very great question. Thank you very much. Um, I'm going to define beauty as understanding the structure that lies beneath the surface, specifically for um, the figure. The figure is two things. It's the architecture, which is the skeleton, and then on that skeleton are the muscles which spin energetically like a DNA helix around the skeleton. And so the more that you understand the skeleton in figurative art, the greater the beauty of your piece. Then there are other elements to beauty besides that. Beauty is also about like belonging to something larger than yourself. It's that is the sacred. It is in the figure. It's the sense that a figure. We look at each other, and it's like people have said to me in when I was back in art school. They said, "Why would you want to do the figure? It was done before." That's such a false statement. Every time that a person is born, it's like there's no two snowflakes that are the same. There are no two human beings that are the same. Everybody's perception of reality is different. Now, yes, to a point, yes, there are tenets to society, yes, but the way we see things is different. And the way that I would create a figure is completely different than my next door neighbor and how he would create a figure. It is the human experience and the individual human experience that is the storytelling aspect. And so that with the universal is what beauty is truly about. You have a balance between something that is understandable by all and communicates to everyone, and then it's the uniqueness of the individual artist and how he can translate reality through his belief system and how he perceives reality that makes it truly unique. And that is also another element of beauty.
Why do you think European culture was so incredibly good at creating and maintaining beautiful things? Art and architecture, profound literature, beautiful poetry. What would you attribute that to?
There is a word in Italian. It's called artigiano. It means artisan. To be an artisan in Europe is still revered. So I was there last week, and my daughter had a haircut at the local salon, and there was such care given to like the actual way that her hair was cut. Um, Tremendous attention to being in the moment, and actually, it's a Japanese phrase. It's first time seeing. It's like you enter into a process of creation, and if you become formulaic, you are not in the moment. You are not in being a human. You're not human at that moment when you start to go into formula, because then you're not using your eyes and all your senses to create. When you use your senses and you are keenly aware, and I'm gonna I'll explain what I do when I sculpt. I have a life model, and the model is posed, and I have an armature, and I have clay, and I'm adding clay. I am directly on the same spot on the model as I am on my sculpture. So I am in this very heightened state of focus that is um, first time seeing. No, not even if I've done this for 75,000 hours. I have never been at that moment before in my whole life. And so then the sculpture is incredibly fresh and unique and intuitive to that specificity of that human being. And I'm capturing the soul of that person in my methodology of diagramming on the clay and then building everything out to a high point. So it's an expansive form that is not falling in on itself. It's expanding out. It's pushing outwards. And so I capture the soul of an individual. And so this is what the European artists did 500 years ago. They had a keen sense that they had to look at life and not be formulaic. European sculpture crashed afterwards at the end of classicism because it became formulaic and it stopped being aware of the necessity to look at life and be in the moment.
That's really interesting. You've touched on this earlier today, but I'm wondering if there's anything else you'd like to throw into the pot. How do you grapple with the ugliness often associated with postmodern art, and what do you believe is its effect on our culture? What is it doing to us?
I think, from my perspective, that modern art is, and especially this comes out of the United States, is very interested in rebellion, in being unique. And uniqueness is seen as a creative, holy grail. It's something to strive for. It goes along very much with American culture to be creative and to be the first one to do something. So if you look at the artist Picasso, and Picasso is very interesting because he decides to go uh, to the primitives to find his holy grail, and so he's saying that art, and he had a point too because the classicists, like I said, had fallen off the edge, that focal point, and had become redundant and weren't really doing an art that was sacred anymore. They were doing something very formulaic. So it wasn't affecting people the way that it should. It wasn't interesting, in fact. So he goes and looks at primitives and he sees these masks that come out of Africa. Now, this is really interesting because those masks that came out of Africa, those were similar to gargoyles that you see on cathedrals in France, except they served a similar purpose too. They were evil spirits, satanic spirits created to ward off other spirits. So the more fearsome and the more evil they could make that mask, the more power it had to ward off the evil spirits by being one step more. So this became the new system to make art. Now, what was thrown out was all of Western civilization, going all the way back to the Greeks and the Bible as well. And now let's think about it for a minute. This is Europe. What does the African mask have to do with European culture? Nothing, absolutely nothing. It's a form of rebellion to decimate something that they're saying is irrelevant. And then it gets worse because the artist decides he is God. And you have someone like Marcel Duchamp and with Dadaism who takes a toilet and writes R mutt on it. And then all of a sudden, that's art. He says that's art. And it's degrading. It's ironic. He's making fun of the viewer. The problem is that's been going on now from since World War I till now. It's like over 100 years. It's gotten terribly redundant and boring, and it has no meaning anymore because it's the same damn thing that they've been doing for 100 years. And so this is a really fascinating thing. This is the anti-aesthetic to beauty, and now it's like valueless. It doesn't do anything for people anymore. General public is thinking like, well, that's nice. But what is it? I don't understand it. They have to go read a book to understand that piece of art. That's a problem. Think about it for a sec. It's visual art. Visual, that's the word, visual. And how do human beings see their reality? 80% of it comes through their vision. And now, so all of a sudden, you're making art. It's not even about human beings. It's about conceptual philosophical ideologies that are basically, propagated by universities and the status quo. And it's like now you've made something even more elite and status conscious, and it's the general public is like, WTF? I don't care about this. And why would they care about it? It has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with like what's going on in the university. And it continues because it's these teachers who are in art departments are given a stipend so that they can make art, but nobody has to fucking buy it. So it's like it doesn't go anywhere. And if you had to make something that the general public had to buy, they would pick something of great beauty. And I can make one more point and then I'll shut up. But it's like, would you ever go out and buy a car that's damn ugly? No, you wouldn't want to. You'd want, if you had a lot of money, you'd buy the most beautiful car that you felt was going to make you feel better. Or would you buy an ugly home on purpose? Well, if you were a dumbass, you would. But that's the whole point. It's like it doesn't make any sense. It's a system that makes no sense whatsoever, and it doesn't go along with like the sense of like I don't want that. It's going to make me feel worse. Uh, but I don't think a lot of people are willing to stand up and say that.
You are absolutely right. Like so many components of our so called free market economy, there's a lot of things that continue to be subsidized or buttressed with taxpayers' money in order to keep that thing above the surface of water. In real free market, these ideas and products simply would not survive. I will admit to you that I'm a bit confused by the Marcel Duchamp's fountain. Full disclosure, I've not looked into this deeply and I've not studied its history. What I know is sort of put together from bits and pieces of information that I've heard here and there, and some anecdotal retellings of how this piece came to be. My read on it is that the author created this piece to wake people up from the artistic slumber, and the purpose of that was to really critique the dire state of art in 1917. He essentially wanted to show the public that the state of play is so bad that art critics and collectors will actually love the fountain. My understanding was that he was basically saying, cut that shit out, enough is enough. But obviously, it had an opposite effect, solidifying and accelerating the modernist movement. Again, I might be completely off target here, but wondering if you know anything about that or have a different opinion.
Yeah, no, you're right, and you also have to put it in the context of the year it was made. It's, World War One is a pivot point for the world and the globe. It's a transformational moment because 22 million people die, and a lot of this is in Europe, obviously, and uh, Eastern Europe with Russia. It's just we cannot comprehend the death and destruction. You have 50,000 people dying in a matter of hours in an afternoon. It's such a complete waste of humanity. No care for governments for their citizens. They just throw them more and more into this warfare that is completely destructive. It's the invention of um, the machine gun and cannons and industrial warfare. Um, and they didn't give a damn. They just kept throwing citizens to die, and villages are just destroyed. And the end result is like, why would you believe that there is a higher order that actually cares? Why would you believe that there is divine order or a unity to the universe when such brutality and ugliness is occurring all over? Um, it's an incredibly poignant moment that is continuing to 2025 to now. It's still here, and you look in cities. The sense of how we live. It's the separation. It's this. There's no sacrament anymore in life. It is returning. This is the first inkling that I have seen in the last few years, but things had gotten so bad that now there seems to be a turning towards the sacred again, um, and I, I I think I'm part of that movement. The sense that humans are something of great value, and if you think about it for a second, you are each and every one of us is given the gift of life. Um, how do we wish to use that terminal gift? Because that's an energy that will expire. And I do believe that a lot of people are beginning to question the norms and the governments and the people that are in charge, like the schools, for example, media, um, big pharma, um, doctors, hospitals. There's a lot more questioning going on. A lot of it is because the information is being released on the internet. And the same thing has happened in the art world. The galleries have crashed. Nobody's buying art anymore, um, and there's a real questioning of museums and the directors of museums that how did all of a sudden these Pharisees gain control of the temple? It's like time to come and throw them out. Uh, that's my job.
That is a big, all life consuming job, but if there's a fight worth fighting, it's that one
Yeah.
for sure. Let's get back to your mega project. I'm wondering, what was the most challenging aspect of creating Soldier's Journey, this incredible sculpture for the National World War One Memorial? When you found out that you've won the competition, did you have a moment where you thought, holy cow, I actually have to make this original piece of art now? Were you totally overwhelmed? I'm just wondering, what was the most challenging part, obviously outside of fighting the Leviathan of bureaucracy, which you've already mentioned to us earlier today?
Yeah, you named it all perfectly right there in a nutshell. I was in a car with my wife. We were circling New York City on the Upper West Side, looking for parking, and we heard the announcement on C-SPAN. It was on the radio, and she was like, "Yeah, you did it! You won! Ah, honey, you won!" And I'm like, I start fucking crying. I'm like, because I realized the gravitas of the moment. I realized I guess I said, how the fuck am I going to do this now? Because if here, I have a level of what I think great art is. And that level is the Sistine Chapel. And now I've been thrown in the boat and you have to make the Sistine Chapel today. And so it's like, oh my God, I got my dream. I won the lottery. But it's like I instantly was hit with the gravitas of the situation. Um, but it's like I really really grew tremendously in so many ways when I got this project. Um, Obviously, I had to grow as an artist. I'd never done a composition with more than two figures. Here you have a 38 figure composition. I had to learn how to deal with the bureaucracy of Washington, which is this was the most horrible part of it all. By the third year, I'd been fighting so many people that I ended up catching the flu. Coming back from the UK from the foundry, and I in 1 month I lose 25 pounds, and I thought I was going to die. The stress had caught up to me, and then I go back in. To the Commission of Fine Arts, and everybody's looking at me. It's like, what happened to you? Do you have cancer? And it's like it was. I had to go through this battle zone where I'm. I guess I'm more sensitive. I don't appear to be sensitive. I have a Teflon exterior. It appears to people, but to make art, you have to be very sensitive to looking and feeling the energy and understanding things. You have to look below the surface, and so it's like you're exposing yourself to real putrid human beings in a process. That these people are like they're not any. I have had a studio prior to this project in ghettos in the South Bronx and in East Harlem. There are a lot of criminals in those parts of the world, and there a lot of good people too. But there are a lot of criminals they'll take advantage of a situation, and those criminals are not any different than the ones that I met in Washington, except the ones in Washington had a suit on. But the same MO, not any different. It's like intimidation, fear, are their tools. And it's like, all these committees are like, you get in the pack, and then it's like, okay, I'm buttressed by everybody else in the committee. And here I am. I'm not in a committee. I'm a lone artist with a singular vision that's not democratic, and I have to pass through these hellish gates. and get through the other side and carry that vision into a physical reality. And that took every ounce of fortitude that I had, every ounce of courage that I had to pass through with these people. And I made a lot of enemies, but it was like I didn't know in the beginning. I thought everybody was like a good person. It's like, I no, no, it's not like that.
The character qualities you are describing here are quite rare in this day and age, unfortunately. You can't allow anyone to slow you down and stop you or change the direction of what you know is right. You sort of can't allow yourself to have doubts about what you're trying to achieve. You just have to push forward.
You can't. You can't. Yeah.
How do you think public monuments like yours influence collective memory and our understanding of history?
There was uh, a movement in the last, especially it happened around the election 2020. There was a lot of tearing down of monuments in our country. Uh, so I really looked at this carefully, and it's harder for me because I make monuments. It takes a lot to put a monument together. A lot of creative force, a lot of people behind. Not only the artist, but you have a commission, you have foundries, you have planning boards. It takes a lot to build something. You're making something. Well, this is a lot. There was a lot of tearing down, and it's an analogy for what has been going on for a while. It's a tearing down of traditional values, and um, the the here's the weird part. The way that it's presented is, oh, we need to make everybody feel like they're on the same level, that they're accepted. Certain groups have been um, uh, oppressed. And this is a very interesting thing. It's like you have a victim and then you have an oppressor concept. And well, what the hell is history? History is brutal. It's been brutal since day one. Um, History doesn't just, it's not daisies in a field, it's violent. Change is violent. Birth is violent. Have you ever heard of a woman said, "Oh, I just had a baby. It was such a wonderful experience." No, she freaking got her, thing ripped in half. And it's like the baby popped out and it was the most painful thing she ever endured. It's like that is what birth is. That's what creation is. And to tear a monument down is a criminal act for many reasons because it's public property. It's destruction of just something that took a lot of effort. Now, I'm not saying that the United States has this pristine history. We did some pretty damn bad things, but it's been taken out of context, and it's taken out of context for the very reason of destroying history, erasing the past, and then guess what? You have a void. And if you have a void, you don't have an umbrella of culture that brings a country together. It divides it, it fractures it, it makes its citizens weaker, it takes away their sense of belonging to something bigger than themselves. So it takes away the sacred, it takes away the sense of identity. And guess what? You can rewrite history then to fit your new government that is now going to take power. And they're not doing it because they're being altruistic or trying to take care of their citizens. They're doing it because they're trying to recreate a power base and get everybody to fall in line and say, oh, you guys are the ones we need to follow. It's very manipulative. And a lot of people are just too stupid to see that this is actually what's happening. So I think that a lot of people, because after COVID and the election in the United States, at least, they began to rethink what the media told them and question what the news media was saying. And then all of a sudden, there were all these other sources of information, and all these other sources were called conspiracy theories. Well, those conspiracy theories were really not conspiracy theories, they were truth. Um, it's a very sad thing. You can't really you really can't destroy a culture. Well, you could try. It's happened in a lot of places with communism, and it's like I don't understand what's like. the thing that happened in the United States was we were headed towards a totalitarian state, and the whole concept was like, let's destroy the Constitution and we'll replace it with new ideologies about victor and oppressors. And you're missing it. There's so much more. And actually, the things that were being perpetuated by these new histories are incredibly racist as well. Um, Fracturing a country is a way to make it fall. If you bring a country together, it will rise, and it's unstoppable. That's that's why I made that monument, because I wanted to make something that is unifying, to tell a story that brings everyone together underneath the flag, which is the highest point on the 60 feet of bronze. That was what the sculpture was about. It didn't matter if you were a Democrat or a Republican. All those men that and women that went off to fight 100 years ago, they were Americans, and they all bled the same colored blood. It was all red. They were human beings. They weren't Democrats or Republicans.
America is such a fascinating country. It has the worst of the world and the best of the world
Yes.
all in one
Yeah,
place.
it really does. I want to add to that that I don't think that I could have ever done a sculpture like this in any other place on the planet, um, because the whole concept here is you can manifest your life the way that you wish. You don't have to be what your parents were. You can have this is the American dream, that you actually can get where you want to go. It's like, my next project is to do another monument. It's like, I didn't go look for a competition. I just created the monument, and then I went out and I'm meeting with people that are interested in making this, making it, not tearing something down, making something. It's a positive, proactive, self-responsible move on my part, and that is partially because I am very American in my mentality. It's not an Italian mentality, that part.
When preparing for this interview, I read about some of the creative slash artistic techniques you're using in your creative process. For the soldier's journey, you've collaborated in a very what sounded like an uncompromising manner with a foundry in the United Kingdom. And what comes to mind is that you're bringing through this massive project something forgotten from the past. And you are doing it in this new age of AI hype, where the dividing lines of what it means to be creative, what it means to be original, are starting to become quite blurry. Do you think that through this project, you have not only put a massive spotlight on traditional craftsmanship, but also reignited some kind of a revival of these traditional, somewhat forgotten methods and techniques?
Great question. I want to simply stated, it's a very pro-human act, what I did. Uh, so we do have deadlines in this day and age, and those deadlines are very tight because everything has been sped up due to technology. So there are a lot of positives to that. So if I had not had the use of simple object, the cell phone, and the camera in the cell phone, um, and I had to draw everything out. I had to draw all those poses out. I never could have captured the same sort of dynamic movement of the figures. So as I moved through the process, um, I, I realized quickly in the beginning that the poses were too static, and I was criticized by the commission. They're too static. They look like they're just acting and standing on the stage. We need something that's more alive. So I started changing my methodology with the models. They weren't like frozen, um, and they were actors. So I would say, okay, you're going to act out this scene, and you're coming from a place, you're here, and then you're going. You have an intention to go someplace. So this is movement, and movement is a form of free will. If you have an idea and you wish to accomplish something, you are in movement towards that goal, that vision. That was very important artistically and creatively. By using the burst system on the cell phone, you push the button and you capture maybe 12 frames, and then from that 12 frame sequence, you pull out the one pose within the 12 that actually explains the whole story of past, present, and future. Then you can capture a single second of someone in space, like running. There's a charging figure in the middle of the composition. You can't hold a pose like that for more than like 15 seconds. So click, camera, done, boom. I gathered all these images that way, and then this is I'm just the first example. Then the second example is we used. I went to New Zealand and I was working at Weta Workshop, and I used a bunch of people that work on the computer to actually take the drawing that I had done. I did a 700-hour drawing from all those photographs, and then we took the drawing, which was using perspective, so the parts of the body that were above the figure, higher up, are smaller because of perspective, so it makes them look more monumental, and the parts below are um, larger, uh, eye level being a main consideration there. Well, then we took that and we printed that out and we got that to clay, and then I went back to working traditionally. So the initial phase, which was the drawing and then the sculpting of the maquette, the little model, was done traditionally. But the grunt work of moving it into clay and collecting all the poses was technologically done. And then now let's get that to an enlargement. We're going up now to the full scale. Um, and I used a photogrammetry rig and the second model that we did, photogrammetry rig is 160 cameras. They go off at the same time with a, a model posed in the very middle, and it's basically a three-dimensional drawing, but and then you can print that out on a computer. So it's a very expedient way to work, but there's no aesthetics in any of this at all. Um, we then I took that and we enlarged that to the full foam, which was the monument, and that's a great armature. We set up a system that is basically we're already on surface now. Most artists would have taken the foam enlargement and gone, "This is fine. We're just going to move things around a little bit." But no, I what I did is I spent 4.5 years, about 650 hours per figure, sculpting again now from life and taking it up a level. Now, why did I do that? When you look at a human being that's a life model and they're dressed in a real uniform from 100 years ago in World War One, and you're the sculptor and you have the ability to actually be very, very precise with how you take that information of life and you translate it into art, that's the actual artistry. What is going on in that artistry? Significant of great significance is the understanding of how the body is put together structurally with the skeleton, the muscles, the anatomy. That's the grammar. That does not come through in the technology. The technology is a mathematical system that is like a camera. It's very mathematical and it has no sense of how we see each other. When we look at each other as human beings, you actually have um, more than just the five senses. You're also reading energy and force and intuition and what that pose is doing. And there are many expressive ways to enhance the story. You study people and then you learn how to bring out their psychology. And I talked before about how you bring out the soul of that human being, the unique human being. And that's what makes this monument so different than so many of the other monuments that are being produced today. I am not interested in smooth, polished bronze. I am interested in capturing the raw essence of another human being, his unique psychology, and then putting it together with other human beings. So you have this interplay of relationships between all these parts. That is what traditional art did. It was not about a figure that is alone. It is about figures that interacted with with other figures. It's the interplay of humanity. And in one sentence, what I do is I sculpt with the human fingerprint, and the technology I use leaves a technological fingerprint. They're very, very different things. One has life force energy, and the other one has, I don't know what it's called. It looks like a mannequin when you go look at it up close. But it has a lot to do with my education in art school and the way that I learned all these systems of translating life into art. Um, they came out of the Renaissance, they came out of Hellenistic art in Greece. They are very tied to the richness of Western civilization. And I think that is what um, distinguishes this memorial, because as a European, I have no problem looking at history and saying, oh, I want to do it like that. But I can't do it like that because I live in this day and age. So I'm deeply affected by film and photos. And those are all very kinetic mediums. They're all, if you think about a film for a second, it's very fast paced, a lot of movement, flash, 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 scene after scene. It's very energized. So I had to make something that's exactly that, like that, but I'm using a form from European art. So it's this melding of these two things. It's a contemporary film, and that's why I call it. It's a bronze film. As you walk from the left to the right, it unfolds for the visitor, and I think that's what makes it so unique. Um, and that's also part of its beauty. It's very, very human.
It's interesting how you've embraced the traditional artistic techniques and the modern technology to get this piece off the ground. And the piece is absolutely spectacular, beyond words. I'm going to include a couple of links in the show notes for the audience so they can explore it. As a side note, you have mentioned a New Zealand based Weta Digital, who are a CGI studio for the film industry, and probably with Industrial Light and Magic, the top two studios in their category. They are the people behind all of the CGI work on the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, the one that Peter Jackson directed 25 years ago. These guys are as high tech as it gets. Did you always want to do a collaboration with them, or did somebody recommend it that you do? What's the story behind it?
No, I didn't even know about them. It's like this. Uh, 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 there's a this is one of the things that I've begun to realize about my life. Um, you can make all these plans that you want, but if you're listening carefully, these things come to you. And Richard Taylor, who ran Weta Workshop, he likes to he goes on trips, brings his assistants with him. They have to do jobs around the world. And he likes to look up sculptors in different places. So he'd been following me because of just me posting some things on Pinterest and stuff like that, and Instagram. And I get this email, and he shows up at my studio in the South Bronx, and this is at the right moment at the right time. And he goes, "Hey, this is really cool. You're doing a World War One project. We just did this World War One giant memorial project with, you know, three times life size figures in Te Papa Museum in Wellington, New Zealand. Uh, there's a lot of overlap here. How would you like to go do your model with us?" And I was like, well, I'm going to do this. 2 weeks later, I'm on a plane, and I raised $500,000. The commission was busted, and I got the money together, and I went over there for the 9 months. It was the best thing I ever did. The only part was I was away from my wife, and that was really, really hard. And my daughter, uh, that was rough. That was a sacrifice I made for the art. Um, but going 9,000 miles away was a godsend, because a commission couldn't get in my hair. And then I could actually create it, and I sent it back the next February in a crate. And those bureaucratic commissioners, lawyers and bureaucrats, and none of them really art experts, they actually it opened their hearts. They cried when they saw the model that I'd made. They had no expectancy of receiving something like that, and um, I was allowed to do what I was supposed to do without them interfering. It'll be interesting because my wife Tracy is finishing up a documentary. It's called Heroic. Sabin Howard Makes a National World War One Memorial. We're going to launch that probably. She'll launch it this coming summer. I'm hoping June or July. Don't know how what app it's going to be on, but it'll go global. And we ran a camera the whole time through the whole process. It's a 2 hour film in about 9.5 years, and um, it is just a roller coaster ride. It's explosive because of the visuals. And um, I'm very curious to see how this is accepted and how it goes.
I've read about your wife a little bit in the lead up to this interview. It would appear that you're a one lucky man to have her in your life, to say the least.
Thank you very much. I will tell her that.
Oh, yes, please make sure you do. I did have a question about her documentary of your project, Sequence, for the tail end of the interview, but while we're on topic of Weta, an application of modern technology in your creative process, Weta, I think, also worked on Peter Jackson's World War One documentary titled They Shall Not Grow Old. Did you see that documentary? And if you did you draw inspiration from the restored footage at all?
Not that much. I'll tell you what really affected me. I came into the project really as an artist, right? And then about midway through the 60 feet after the battle scene, I realized the models that I was using they were actors and college boys, and that was fine because in the beginning, think about it, they're college boys, they're young kids going off the war. They don't look like they've been in battle. Um, I got in touch with a veteran, and then I got in touch with all these veterans, and um, all of a sudden, I was sculpting combat veterans in my studio, guys that had been all of them all had shell shocked, modern day shell shock, PTSD, post traumatic syndrome. Uh, they all had to deal with reentry and being a citizen again after they'd been in combat, and their faces told that story because their history is indelibly marked on your morphology and your features, and their features are on that wall forever. They beat mortality in bronze. Those guys changed me because I realized they were in service of their country. Now, look, I am not pro war. I hate fucking war. I grew up in the Vietnam era. I saw what war is. It is the most discrediting thing that you can do to a human being. Human beings are thrown into hell, and the people that live in the war zone, they're destroyed forever. Their lives are destroyed irrevocably. The Ukraine thing is an absurd Groundhog Day yet one more time. It's disgusting. It's nothing to do with democracy. It's all about making money. And I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole, but it's like I got that message from these guys because I saw what they went through. And I learned that my art is in service of them. And that's why it's called A Soldier's Journey. And not once when I went through all the agency meeting in Washington was the word veteran uttered. Not once. And what is this sculpture for? It is for the veterans of 100 years ago and the veterans that are in service now. And so it's a sculpture for people, for we the people. And so it's like this understanding that you're making something for others was not something that I had in my hard drive before I got the project. I had to grow into the position. And the next monuments that I do are the same thing. I'm making them for other people to elevate other people. It's you're supposed to leave the planet better off than when you came in, and that's my job.
Yeah, that's interesting. As somebody who was primarily raised in Europe, I have extremely mixed feelings about World War One, about Second World
Yeah,
War
it's
Two,
horrible.
any war
It's
really.
horrible.
Listening to stories of grandfathers who had to take part and who chose to take part is really hard to understand why these battles were managed the way they were managed. It was such an insane meat grinder, this whole thing. There's an amazing book written by Frank Freudy titled The First World War, Still No End in Sight, where he argues that World War One has not concluded with armistice in 1918, but persists into contemporary times. In the book, he talks about how cultural political and social disruption caused by the war continued to shape the world, influencing sort of ongoing conflicts and cultural memory and the very way we perceived history and identity. He also argues in the book the war's legacy includes a profound sense of kind of cultural dislocation as well as the rise of identity politics. It's a short book, but it's incredibly well thought out and incredibly well put together.
There was. I want to add one thing that happened early on in the Bronx when I was posing and coming up with the poses that kind of woke me up to what you just said. James Mansfield, he's a friend of mine, and he's in New York. He makes a lot of money as a building contractor, and he's from the UK. And he asked if he could be a model, and I was like, "Well, James, why do you want to model?" And he was like, "I'll tell you later." So he's bringing all this energy to the poses, getting all these young kids that are actors to really bring themselves to the scenes, you know. And so one day he hangs back after everybody's left, and he says, "Okay, Sabin, I'll tell you why. My great great grandfather and my great uncle went to war in World War I. My great uncle never came back. My great grandfather came back, and with his service revolver, he proceeded to shoot his wife, his daughter, and then himself. And I grew up in that home. And I realized that when people go to war, they are not the only ones affected. They leave an indelible print on their family and generations that follow. And I had the same thing in my own family where my grandfather was in World War II and my mother was left behind in Turin. He was a POW in Africa and he escaped from the British and walked all the way back. All of Italy. It took him 3 months to get home. My mother never kind of recovered. And obviously, it's like I've become more aware of this that how war is so destructive to humanity is never really thought out. Like, it's never really talked about. The awareness of like the value of human life is it's not part of this. And so when you make a monument like this, you're not making something to say, yeah, let's go to war. It's like, it's not, it's the exact freaking opposite. The memorial is about human beings and the value and the sacredness of human life and the families and all the emotions that we have as human beings are on that wall. And it was my job to do something that actually honors the human race and brings us all together under the auspice of like rising to the occasion. That is what that sculpture is about. Rise to the occasion. And so it's supposed to affect the visitor in their daily life. You go look at that and then you walk away. Well, wow, that guy did that. Maybe I can do something more with my life. That's what I'm all about. And so how the F are you going to find that in modern art? In ugliness. It doesn't do that. It makes you alone and it makes you have no hope, no anxiety. It's like there's no point. You might as well off yourself right now if you look at modern art. That's what the message is.
Yeah, I think his sculpture does that very well. I've not experienced it myself in real life. Obviously, I'm just looking at photographs and drawings, but when I do look at it, I can see how it connects to the sea of trauma generated by the war. This ocean of trauma goes well beyond the soldier. It impacts women,
Yeah.
children,
Yeah.
big and small families, and endless future generations. Looking at Great Britain, for example, this endless sea of trauma has completely annihilated the confidence of the British, as well as the French and Germans, really. I would say citizens of these European countries still to this day are swimming in that sea of trauma without knowing that they are.
Yes. Well, I think it's interesting and really ironic that okay, that war was fought 100 years ago. No, we're 100 years later, and maybe now this is the next wave that can heal what has happened and bring us more towards the sensibility that human life has great value, and it's like we all need to work together in a unified whole rather than divide each other up in the way that the media and the government likes us to be, because then it kind of takes away our power if we're acting as a unified whole as a I mean it's a utopian way of thinking, obviously, but isn't it better to think on positive terms than like you know he's shit and she's shit and I'm better, and it's like That doesn't do anything. And that's what a lot what modern art does. And the ugliness, that's what it does. It divides people and takes away their hope that there can be a better, higher consciousness that gets you there. And if you, one of the things that's really helped me in the process was, um, I, I, if you have a very, very difficult task, this was a difficult task. You really can't do it if you think you're alone. So one of the things that gave me great force and just rejuvenated me on a daily basis was the knowledge that someone's got my back, and that sacredness. This is spirituality is a grounding in knowing that I can proceed. That there is hope. There is something larger than me that will protect me and carry me forward through the fire. And maybe maybe it's foolhardy to think that. I don't know. But just thinking that there is something larger than myself that will help me get through is everything. And that is not modern art. That is the traditional Western civilization values.
Yes, that belief you are describing is quintessentially human, I think, which ties to what you said at the very beginning today, that the act of creating this piece is at its foundation human. We've only got a couple of questions left, and I really want to quiz you about your vision for the future of art. When I was reading about you, I came across stories about your famous singular focus and relatively uncompromising nature. You want your teams to go all in and fully commit to the task or make space for somebody else who's willing to go those few extra miles. I really like that, and I strongly believe that this attitude is absolutely essential to really change the status quo. Steve Jobs had that quality. Elon is probably the most extreme example of somebody who embodies this uncompromising attitude, making his teams do insanely impossible things. So, yeah, can you please talk to us a little bit about your vision for the future of art, as well as tell us how you've organized your studio that allowed you to create this seemingly impossible art?
I came into the project and I was leery about taking on a leadership role. I morphed and realized that I had been given a task and a mission, and that it was my responsibility to carry it to fruition. And if I did not stand up and deal with confrontation with some of the other workers that were um, unable to stretch, to grow, because if I was doing everything I could to grow and become a better artist, better person, to have greater vision, to be more generous, because of what I was doing was like it wasn't for me. I didn't do this for the money. It's like I did this because I realized how important it was to give back. Um, and the players in the studio that didn't want to evolve were booted, and my nickname became Il Duce, which is Mussolini's name, because it's like it's my way or the highway. And it was like the ones that remained are incredibly loyal. Like Charlie is with me and his wife Jess, and they had a baby 5 days before we closed the clay down at the very end. He's grown tremendously, and it's like the values we have a culture in our studio that is about it is God driven, it is unifying, it is I am incredibly generous with salaries, but I expect everything, and I will bring my team to have to, through hell to get to a place that is miraculous. And um, you need that. The next go round will be in Salt Lake, and Salt Lake already has something that is the Northeast does not have. It has a sense of recognizing the sacred in God, and that we have a short period of time on Earth, and it needs to be used valuably, and it needs to be used to give back to others. And um, the people that will enter my studio will have to be like that, and it's not going to be like the first go around where I would keep somebody in for an extra hour. A year and a half. It'll be a week if it doesn't work out. It's like, thank you. It's just, listen, you're just not getting it, and so um, let's call it a day. And my wife is also amazing person. She's taught me a lot. Uh, I've had to grow to it. I'm not. I'm like an Italian opera. I'm very dramatic. It's I got all these emotions. I'm very passionate about what I do. I'm not a icy cerebral person. I do think a lot, but I go on a hell of a lot of um, gut instincts, and I'm always on the sharp edge, about ready to crash. And that's what makes really great art, because you need to be stretched as an artist to problem solve, and you can't do it like, oh yeah, I know how to do that, I can get through. It's not going to be good. You have to be stretched and pushed to, a place that you've never been before, like Star Trek, to go where no man has ever gone before. That's the fucking answer to making great art. That's Caravaggio, that's Bernini, that's Michelangelo, that's Leonardo. These are men that in their studios were traveling to a place that no one had ever been before, because it was their unique vision, but it was a universal message that they carried. And that's what makes them so powerful and heroic in the history books.
Let's briefly talk about your wife's documentary film. This idea to turn a soldier's journey as a creative experience, creative process into a documentary, was it always there from day one for you, or did it come to you and your wife a little bit later once you were in flight with the project?
My wife, little background on her, was a novelist before this project. And then this project was all consuming. So she came on board as my partner, because she quickly saw that if she didn't, we were headed to, not a good place. Because you imagine, you go to work every day and you're at your max, and this is a marathon. And then you come home, what do you have left? You're like, you're shot. You got nothing. You're like empty. Your tank's empty. And then you got to do it again the next day. And it doesn't matter what's going on in your head or how your body feels. You just have to do it again. So she came in, and we're a team now. It's like, and she switched over to becoming a documentarian. She's an amazing woman. She learned how to do everything, and then edit everything and put it together. And she had some help with some serious professionals that came in. And now she's finishing up, and she's got some serious music people coming in to live music as a soundtrack. Incredible story, uh, and it's there's no talking heads. It's not like meet blah 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 blah. No, it's like this is like a movie, and it's very raw. It's like I'm not like I would make a lot of people cringe. It's like I fire people, I yell at them, I scream at them, I throw things. Um, it's in the movie. It's like it's a human movie. You make a monument, you better be one tough son of a bitch, um, because it's going to crush you if you're not.
Did your wife work with a film crew, or was it primarily herself?
It's primarily herself. We had other people filming and grabbing B-roll every day. So we captured everything. I mean, literally everything. It's like I had a microphone on. I was like, screw it. I'm just going to go pee. I'm not turning it off. I mean, that's not the movie, but it's like everything is in there. This is not like sugar coated. You you know, this is the what is that Sergio Leone movie? The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. This is the good, the bad, and the ugly of making a monument.
Well, these days people look for authenticity, so it's a good thing that you recorded the movie with all of the good stuff, all of the ugly stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
It's going to be damn entertaining. I'll tell you that much.
When the editing is done, how is your wife planning to release this movie? If people want to see it, where should they go?
I don't know yet. She's got a couple options. I don't really know. what she's going to do, if it'll go like Netflix, Amazon, or Angel app or something like that. But it's got to be a big distribution. That's the whole deal with these. You can make a great documentary, but if you don't do the distribution right, um, you crash. It doesn't go where it's supposed to go. Look, I'm on a mission. I'm really here to expose the nonsense in the art world, and put the human and the sacred back into the art world, so general public and we the people will get their the thing that is their God-given birthright. I think art has been hijacked for way too long, and um, I really think we got a rotten system with academics, like perpetuating the nonsense of Marcel Duchamp. So it's like, let's take their head and flush them away and put something of value in the art world that actually is reminiscent of Chartres. Like that's an amazing thing. They rebuilt the cathedral. It's probably not as good as the first one, but it's still, they did that. And that, to me, is where we have to go as globally. We all have to make this place better, and that's what this monument is about.
I love that, and I'm absolutely on board with that mission. Finally, for people who want to stay close to what you are doing creatively day to day, and more importantly, for people who want to beg you for a job in your studio, because, as you've said, young artists need to learn from a master, but there's not that many masters out there, I'd say. Do you actually have a lot of students knocking on your door?
I do, not so much lately. This has been a rough year for me. I finished sculpting, and then I didn't just jump in. I wanted to do something bigger, and so just now getting organized. Very hard for me not to work and sculpt. Never been off from sculpting this long, a whole year. Made an oath to myself, I'll never stop again until I'm dead. I'm going to take on two monuments this time at once. And we're going to move to Salt Lake. If you want to reach me, I'm sabinhoward.com. You can find me on X. You can find me on Instagram. I am accessible. I will talk to you. I'm not any different than you. I'm a human being. And it's like, I'm planning on having several people assist me, and I will give everything I have to teach them to bring them to the next level.
Mr. Howard, you've been a lot of fun today. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to have you on the show. All the best with all your projects in the future and the big move to Utah.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on.
What we create as a society reflects who we are, and just as importantly, who we aspire to become. For centuries, art has served as a mirror and our guide, reminding us of our capacity for greatness. But as Sabin Howard pointed out today, we have reached a point where much of what we call art no longer seeks to inspire. It's disconnected from human spirit and anything that's divine, and primarily preoccupied with cynicism rather than form and beauty. Sabin's work stands as a defiant challenge to this trend. His works remind us of the power of the human form, the value of discipline and craft, and the timeless importance of creating something beautiful. More than that, his art shows us what's possible when the artist blends classical principles with modern innovation, when the artist honors the past but refuses to be absolutely bound by it. At the illumination ceremony for Sabin's majestic A Soldier's Journey sculpture on the evening of September 13th, 2024, Mr. Howard uttered the following words: "This sculpture is in the service of our nation. It is in the service of veterans today and the veterans that are no longer with us. So tonight we are telling their story, and tonight they will be revered because this sculpture is for them." Thank you for your attention today, and see you next time.